What is up, everybody? How we doing? Happy Wednesday. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the CRE News Hour. It's a weekly podcast at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time where we come to you live, discuss current events and everything commercial real estate. My name is Henry Eisenstein, and today I'm with my co-host, Rafael Collazo. How you doing, my friend?
Great, man. Cannot complain. Drinking a little tea this afternoon. Not feeling the greatest, but now that we're on the live stream, I feel much better. So I'm excited to dive into some articles.
That's right. And Chad will be back next week for everyone watching. So stay tuned next week. Chad will be back. But let's dive into some fun articles this week. What do we got to kick things off?
Let's do it. So the next, the article that we're highlighting today is actually an article that, is from BizNow that is related to a recent appearance of Peter Linneman on the Walker webcast. So if you guys haven't had a chance to subscribe to Willie Walker's webcast, those are always really, really informative. He has people from not only the real estate industry, but also, kind of just titans of industry on the show. And they talk about a variety of different, topics pertaining to business and enterprise. And Peter Linneman is an extremely well-respected economist. I believe he's an economist at the Wharton School. And they talked a little bit about the recent release of data and how they, similar to what, we've talked about, we don't necessarily agree with some of the metrics that have been shared. So one of the things they kind of highlighted in this particular discussion is that, the rent numbers that they're projecting being, upper fives, meaning that the rent increases over that period of time are not actually accurate. Utilizing data. So Willie Walker, they run a firm that's tied to the mortgage business. And so they were able to access a lot of data, and they were actually able to confirm on their end that, based on the research group, they found that the increase for the single family home side was likely closer to just 3.3% as opposed to the 5.9% that was being projected by the Fed. And because the rent numbers are roughly 36% of the CPI, that's a huge difference. And if those numbers are applied to the actual equation, the numbers that were released regarding the inflation numbers would be significantly lower than what they are actually proposing. And so, they kind of just go deeper into data and really highlight things about the numbers and why they think they're skewed. One of the other things that Linneman talked about was that they think that the unemployment numbers are almost double what is estimated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. He was projecting unemployment at roughly 6.6%, which is higher than what the Bureau of Labor Statistics is estimating at 3.8%. And again, as the Fed is in place to be able to control inflation and obviously help us on the unemployment front. So there's two very important metrics that are what they believe are skewed that are impacting their ability to then actually respond as the Fed to be able to, modify their Fed funds target rate. So, it was just, this article's got into really in depth into numbers and stuff. So I definitely highly encourage you guys to check this out. And if you guys haven't a chance to listen to the actual webcast, I highly encourage you guys to do that as well. So Henry, I don't know if you have any comments on this.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is we talk about the skewing of data by the government when they're coming out with these reports, and articles like this just kind of, reaffirm what we all realize is happening all the time, which is that they're completely skewing data. I wouldn't even say for the worse or for the better. They're just skewing data for whatever reason that they're doing it, right? They're just not giving the accurate information. You can say it's for political reasons, you can say it's for economic reasons, you can say it's for all these different reasons. But it's what's interesting to me is number one, the situation that we're in right now economically, every single person on planet Earth, or when I say planet Earth, I mean America. Everyone in America is feeling pain right now, economically. Every single person is feeling it. There's at different levels, right? Obviously, depending on your economic stature, financially, or financially economic stature, you're feeling it differently. But everyone's feeling it. Things are just infinitely more expensive than they were, and I don't see that going down anytime soon. Like, it's not like we're all of a sudden going to see a drastic decrease in prices overall. The only thing I really see that, the only thing I feel like that you can actually see vividly that actually goes up and down is the prices of gas, because it's
Mhm.
not like McDonald's is going to lower the price of their food. They're not going to do that. It can be cheaper for them, but if they're already getting people to pay what they're paying now, they're not going to lower their prices, right? Like,
Mhm.
when you see all these all these triggers of inflation across the board, you could call it supply chain, you can call it this, you can call it that. Like, I don't see that all these companies are going to lower their prices across the board. They're just not. Like, if chicken gets, as a simple explanation, a simple thing is, like, if food, produce, or whatever gets cheaper, like, it's not like Whole Foods is going to then lower the price of chicken, right? Or
Yeah.
eggs or whatever, right? They're not going to do that. Prices are going to stay high because clearly people are paying it. Why on planet Earth, if you're a business owner and people are paying the price right now, why would they lower their prices, right? Like, they're just going to create more profits for themselves. So I don't actually see these prices changing anytime
Mhm.
soon whatsoever. The same thing with interest rates, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit, but, like, to in tandem, it's just like, I don't see it going anywhere for quite some time. I think it's here to stay. And I think this is what everyone just has to get used to, this being the new normal,
Yeah,
right?
no, I agree with you. And one thing that I'm always been fascinated by as to why, you don't see more collaboration between, the Fed and people in the private sector, people who are actually in the day-to-day operations within business, is that, you know, people like a Peter Linneman or people like a Willie Walker that have access to data that oftentimes for whatever reason the Fed may or may not have access to, because it's obviously private data that they've collected through means that, to support their own enterprise. But getting access to some of this data kind of helps you determine what the best course of action is, because if you're looking at data that's old or unreliable and you're making these decisions, you can have a lot of collateral damage because you don't have the most up-to-date information. And so, obviously that's what we're facing with this particular article, is that, they're relying, in my opinion, on not complete information to make these decisions, and it's ultimately going to affect a very
It's
large swath of the population.
it's just like, look, I don't understand how we have technology that
Mhm.
allows us to literally find anyone on planet Earth at any point in time, right? Like, we were able to know that, as an example, Bin Laden, where he was to the exact second that he was there, okay, through
Mhm.
thermal imaging. Okay, we know where this guy is, and that was 10 plus years ago. Okay, how on planet Earth do we not have accurate data? Okay, how are we not getting accurate data in all of these? Like, it's like, how are we still relying on 12-month of lag data? How is
Mhm.
that even a thing? Right? It's like, if we have unbelievable technologies these days, it's like we're still relying on such nonsense. It just makes absolutely no sense to me. And you see articles like this, and like this just continues to prove that, like, the government is not doing these things for the benefit of you, the average everyday American. They are not doing that, because if they were, we would be making very different decisions, right?
Yeah. And
And we just need
it,
to keep that in mind, that, like, we if you cannot rely on the government to make decisions that will benefit you, because they are not.
yeah.
None of it is.
And to be fair with the Fed, they're supposed to be independent from, any other governing body. They're supposed to make it independent decision making, and logically that makes sense. But the problem with that is that you operate in a silo, and with if you have a very limited pool of data that you're
Do you think they're
referencing.
not bought? Just, do you think they're
I
not
don't.
bought?
I can't comment on that. I think that there's benefits to them making certain decisions. Who knows? I mean, it could very well be. I mean, obviously, when you're dealing with officials that are appointed, I mean, obviously, if there is a gray area that operates, because they could potentially
But I'm
lose
saying,
their
like, just
status.
what I'm saying is, like, and look, I'm not trying to, it's like, do you know if Jerome Powell was bought? No, I'm saying,
Yeah.
like, who is this? Like, Patrick McDavid talks about this a lot. Like, who is actually winning in scenarios like this? Who benefits from high inflation? Who benefits from interest rates being high? Who benefits from all these different things? Right? And, like, the only people that I can think possibly that benefit from any of this occurring the way it is are the largest corporations in the world.
Mhm.
right? That's it.
Yeah.
No
Well,
one else is
asset
benefiting.
owners, people who own assets, and really, I mean, you see it through just the pandemic where the transfer of wealth that occurred over that 2 or 3 year period was astronomical. I mean, the top, what we consider to be the top 0.1% or whatever that is, received, I don't remember the number, but it was like in the tens of percents delta between that and the rest of the population. So obviously that's,
But it's not even,
there's no denying that this will obviously benefit those who have assets, which happen to be these large corporations and
and when
very
you say
wealthy.
assets, though, we're not talking about owning a house or multiple properties. Like we're
No, no, we're
talking about,
talking. Yeah, no, I'm not saying it. No, I'm not saying assets from a house standpoint. I'm saying like an asset can be anything. An asset can be a
but
corporation. An asset can be a
but
real
yeah, I'm
estate
just saying
developer.
like the Blackstones are winning here. Like
Yeah.
Chase Bank is winning here, right? Like all of the major corporations that have the biggest amounts of control are
Hmm.
the only people winning in these types of economic times. And like it's just like these are the moments where I go, like I really am like these are the moments that I have to pinch myself sometimes, and like not so much of like a real like like more realizing that truly and honestly there is nothing that the government is doing for me.
Hmm.
Period. If I want my life to be like, these are moments where like we're on the brink of World War III, right?
Hmm.
We're on the brink of like the crazy economic, recession, depression. You call it whatever you want, right? These are points where you have to double and triple down in so many different fashions of your own business and take care of your family because no one else is coming for you. This is
No,
like,
yeah,
and
and I think
we got
that's a
this for
good.
12 to 24 more
Yeah,
months.
I think
Easy.
I think you're right, and I think part of it too is that relying on anyone really for your own financial security is a bad move in my opinion. So I think preaching personal responsibility and saying, look, guys, like regardless of your leanings on the political front, it's your responsibility to provide for your family and to grow your enterprise. And you can't really expect or rely on any other party to be able to affect that change within you. So I like that message. It's just saying, look, guys, personal responsibility is everything, and you could
Yeah.
change the course of your life if you're willing to really dedicate yourself to doing something in that
And more,
direction.
and also just like keeping in mind that like keep it like Gary Vaynerchuk had said this at one point, which is think about worst case scenarios
Hmm.
where it's just like imagine if interest rates actually went up and they stayed up for the next 2 or 3 years. How would you make decisions differently versus the thought of like, oh well, they'll probably come down in a year, right?
Hmm.
Like think worst case scenario. If they're going to be 7.5, 8% or higher for the next 3 to 5 years, how would you do? What would you do differently? Because that's the lens you need to be looking at it in. And if it's better, great. But you need to be working in a capacity of worst case scenario right now.
Hmm. That's smart. That's a really good advice, and I'm hopeful that most people that are listening to this do take that and heed that going forward. All right. So next up is some luxury retailers defy downturn in one of California's hardest hit cities. Nice.
Yeah, so I figured we just talk about San Francisco and how screwed
Hmm.
up things are, and talk about real estate about it. Where I
Hmm.
mean, first and foremost, did you see the article
Ooh.
recently about the $24 billion that was spent on homelessness over the last 5 years?
No, I
That
didn't, but I'm not surprised, and I'm not sure what impact it's had.
but it was like they couldn't what's his name, Newsom had basically miscalculated about how much money that they had spent, and it equated to $24 billion fighting homelessness
Hmm.
in the last 5 years, which had just been like over or drastically miscalculated. And
Hmm.
it's like San Francisco, I think, is the one of the worst run cities um politically of any city in the United States, and it is drastically affecting real estate in a number of ways. One of which is, the vacancy rate in retail have went from, specifically in Union Square, went from 9% to 25%. 9% in 2019 to now today 25%. It's saying making it one of the hardest hit neighborhoods in San Francisco. Well, that's higher than the overall city's retail vacancy rate. The entire city's vacancy rate is 20% after experiencing, which I actually think is low, to be honest with you. I'm shocked that it's only 20% because of what's occurring in that area. But 20% is obviously incredibly high for a fantastic city like San Francisco. Like 10 years ago, I mean, San Francisco was literally the most expensive city, or one of the most expensive cities to live.
It could
You
still
know,
be close to that too. I mean, really, it's still kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
crazy to live there.
But you could see like a lot of the largest luxury brands are vacating, leaving, goodbye, gone.
Mm.
Macy's is occupies a major multi-100,000 square foot building, trying to sell the building in the months to come. A lot of vacancy to come. So listen, if you're in the local Bay Area, I think there's a lot of opportunity that comes with being in this market, which is, if you have some large investors that are looking to move some money, these are some long-term plays. I think San Francisco is a city that I would bet on. I would bet San Francisco to have a major rebound over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And if you can get deals at great prices, I would move my money there all day long. But just knowing that the next few years is going to be very, very tough. Like when Newsom gets kicked to the curb, and they have somebody actually coming into a place that will actually support the area, I think they'll have a way better result. But right now, you can see here, increase in sales resulted in the uptick in retailers releasing over 650,000 square feet. I mean, you still have some big areas that are coming into the area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You know,
it looks like a lot of these high-end retailers are doubling down. I mean, there's still an immense amount of money that goes
crazy amount
through
of money.
San Francisco. So these luxury brands, I imagine their margins are pretty
Oh,
awesome.
they're unbelievable.
Yeah, because think about it. You sell. I mean, I don't know. I'm fascinated by watches. I'm not necessarily someone who buys like a bunch of watches or anything like that, but I do like, obviously,
What's the watch you like? What's the brand?
well, I'm a fan. So my dad has an Omega, so I've always admired it. I love Omegas. I also have obviously seen all the major watch brands like the Patek Philippe's and the Rolexes, etc. So I mean, I'm an admirer of watches. I don't necessarily have a very large collection, and at some point in the future, I may decide to buy a nice watch. But again, when you're looking at some of the pricing on these watches, it's crazy, man. Like there's watches out there that are $5-10 million because of whatever they're one of one and they're handmade, all this other nuance to it, and it's like my word, it's unbelievable. And obviously, you're talking about some of these higher end jewelers. You could buy a chain that's $500,000. If it's a has all the diamonds and whatever else. So the jewelry business seems to be one that is relatively high margin. I would imagine very competitive, but so it seems like those retailers in those areas seem to be doing well. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious for people who are watching this. Comment down below. What's your thoughts on San Francisco? Do you see like in 10, 20, like what's your vision for San Francisco? Do you think it's going to bounce back? Do you think it's going to stay terrible for, the years to come, where San Francisco will go down the tubes like Detroit? Right? Like, do you think it's going to, end up being like the next Detroit, or do you think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in buying in San Francisco? Love to hear your thoughts. Obviously, Tom, thank you for tuning in and writing down. You talked about BlackRock just buying up Air Communities, which actually I live in an Air Communities building. Funny enough that so that'll be changing over to BlackRock, which is pretty funny. Nice. And then Matt, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it. The PBD podcast. Yeah, it was a great podcast yesterday. I thought it was very interesting. I think we should even do some more world news. I mean, just crazy what the heck's going on in this world. And yeah, I agree. $24 billion for 171,000 homeless people. You might as well just give everyone else a stipend. You should have just given the homeless people $24 billion.
What's the ratio there? Here, let me see. 24 billion divided by
well over $1 million per person.
Yeah, so it is for 24 billion.
Well,
140,000 per person. And that's over over 5 years?
Last 5 years, yeah.
Yeah, so I
did my math wrong. Yeah,
no, that's fine. Yeah. No, that makes sense. So it's
$140,000 per person over the last 5 years.
Yeah, so you're talking, 30,000 a year, or close to 30,000 a year per person. I mean,
you should have just given them all like 10 grand and 10 to 25,000 bucks
and started or something, just to
call
be
it
able
a day.
to get up and rolling. I mean, yeah, and obviously there's a lot of. I mean, it's crazy because you start with 24 million, then it starts trickling down, and all of a sudden it's like this gets taken and this gets taken, and by the time it actually reaches them, who knows what actually was finally given. But
Ponzi schemes, we like this.
I know. So this next article is actually one. They described it as a Ponzi scheme, but I think again, we'll talk about it, and you make the judgment here. But so U.S. senators from Massachusetts sent a letter to Medical Properties Trust, which is the largest hospital landlord in the country, criticizing their business model. So, essentially what's happening is in their municipalities, and I guess in Massachusetts, there's a hospital operators that are struggling to make rent payments, and over a period of this several years, the what do you call it? The Medical Properties Trust landlord has been kind of like giving loans to this hospital to continue to make payments on rent. So it's essentially like they're getting payment of rent from the tenants, but really it's them just continuing to add to the debt burden on top of them, which was why they described it as appearance of a Ponzi scheme, because it's like,
do you think that's stupid? I'm just curious. Like, what's your take on that? Do you
well,
think it's
well,
stupid for them to do that?
so the logic there, this is why they're criticizing their business models, because apparently this Medical Properties Trust group, they buy these buildings with sales and leaseback. So they'll like buy the building and then place the hospital in there and charge them a really high rent, which essentially shrinks their margins to very minimal. So
Yep.
in order for them to survive on site, you have to run the hospital extremely efficiently. And so any variation the way that you perform on site is going to impact your ability to pay the rent. And so it creates like this kind of like vicious cycle. And so the reason they did that was because I'm assuming they wanted their property values to stay elevated. So the more rent you pay, then the higher value of your property. But
Mhm.
obviously it puts a significant burden on the tenant that's operating on site. And so that's the criticism that they're providing. And,
But I'm saying, like, think about. I'm just curious, right? Like, and for those of you who are listening, put in the comments. If you guys are live, put in the comment section down below. I'm very curious. If you're a landlord, okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a hospital. But if you're a landlord of any size property and your tenant is a fantastic tenant, very high quality tenant, and has good financial stature, they've been paying in the past. Obviously, they're just going through a little bit of a tough time. Would you lend them money if they needed it? Right? Especially in this huge business scenario. Like, you're not talking about John down the street who's got a, whatever job. We're talking about like a fantastic business tenant, right? Would you give them a loan to try to give them, a little bit of support? Would you do that? I don't know. Maybe
Well,
you
you have to
would.
collateralize. I would do it. I mean, I would collateralize it though. I'd be like, okay, well, if you guys don't pay the rent, then I have to be able to recoup it somehow. So there's got to be a way for them to like, if they have other assets, like we can come after those assets or something. And I
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
know if
like,
that's the
think about
arrangement they have.
60 mil. I'm imagining they did something like that. I mean, I don't know if they wouldn't do any type of collateral. That'd be kind of
Mm,
silly. But
yeah.
I don't see why this is such a big deal. Like, of course you're going to do this. And I think so, like, number one, the lease back play is incredibly smart.
Hmm.
I think this is more so of like, what's funny? Do you like, and I think this is so comical. I love the fact that in this type of scenario, the landlord's the bad guy, not the fact that the hospitals cannot run appropriately. They're taking advantage of people, which they are. Like, people don't realize. I mean, my fiance was just in the hospital for 10 hours. The medical bill was $55,000. Right. So it's just
Is
like,
she okay, by the way? Just wanted to
yeah,
confirm. I
no,
know.
no, she's okay. Thank you for all the people who reached out. She's doing great now. We're starting
Yeah.
physical therapy. She doesn't need surgery. So I appreciate all that. But it's like, I love how healthcare just doesn't get any weird rap, doesn't get any sort of the pointing the fingers. It's definitely the landlord's fault for literally giving a loan to the tenant. But because they're trying to, quote, inflate their purchase price or inflate their values, the landlord's to blame. What
Mhm.
about right? What about our healthcare system? Why does that
Yeah.
not get
Well,
some type of BS?
absolutely. And that comes back to the also the tenant that signed it. Like, you don't have to agree to the agreement. I mean, you can,
Exactly.
so there, so it's not an illegal practice per se. They're not questioning that again. But when these hospitals are risking closing in their jurisdictions, as a politician, you try to issue inflammatory, letters and content to be able to to change the way that these people are doing business. Now, would you yourself do it? Who knows? I mean, if I were in that
I just
situation,
think it's funny.
I mean, it's silly. They're just essentially trying to impose their will to try to help their constituents by keeping these hospitals open. But at the end of the day, if those hospitals are not operating at peak performance, and they've signed on a commitment that, you know, that they've already committed to doing something like that,
Yeah.
if it doesn't happen and doesn't work, like it's really the hospital's responsibility. But it is
Yeah,
what
like
it
who's
is.
at fault here? Like what like it's just
Mhm.
so fascinating to me. Like it's like you think about if you're the what would you say that was the senator, the Massachusetts senator?
Yeah,
It's just
it's
like
a senator and also I think a congressman.
so it's
Who
like
is
what
it?
do you what,
It's
I'm just
Elizabeth.
like
It was Elizabeth Warren and
I'm just genuinely curious. What is their end goal? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? You're pointing a finger at the landlord and saying, "How dare you try to support your tenant?" Right? Like, and helping them pay rent, or what do you want them to do? Lower the rent,
yeah. I
right?
mean that
Like,
that they're trying to say that you shouldn't charge crazy what they just deem to be unreasonable rents, so that you are kind of putting the hospital system in a bad spot. So
it's
because of where the rents currently are, they're saying that oh, the margins are too slim and they can't operate to be able to
they have no
support.
idea.
They don't know. I
It's
mean,
just like
and
it's just like
that's where I think that
they don't operate hospitals and they don't own real estate and they think the
mhm.
rent's too high.
That
Makes no sense.
that's my thought process, most likely, because again, but you know, you got to pick a side, I guess, right?
Yeah, no, I gotta love politicians trying to stick their nose where it don't belong.
Hey, I think that's a limerick somewhere. I'm sure someone's written that.
I'm sure it is.
All right. So next up, let's see it. Retail sales post impressive back-to-back gains. Woohoo!
Yeah, so I mean, this is just more about consumer spending, right? Like this is just talking about how consumer spending actually has 2 months of positive growth, which is quite interesting.
Hmm.
Um, but also it's like incredibly fascinating. Where like somehow like depending on how you're actually reading this data, I just find it incredibly interesting. Where it's like, okay, if you look at this one right here, which just changed
Hmm.
from the previous month, which is like, okay, it went down a full percentage point, and then it went up a full percentage, or not even a full percentage point. So we're even from 2 months ago, right? Of like from January to February, right? And then if you look in March, we're back up 0.6. So like we're about even with November of last year, right? And it's like
Hmm.
it's interesting how the way that they perceive all this, where like shoppers are at it again. It's like, guys, like this is you have to be careful where you're getting your data from, because it's like is this a good thing or a bad thing, right? Like is it good that we're spending more and more money and we're going into debt, and like when everything's infinitely more expensive and people are making less money overall in percentage rates or percentage ratios in regards to debt and overall cost than ever before? Like is it actually good that we're spending more money, or is it a bad thing? Like it's just like they're making it like it's a great thing that we should still have incredibly high consumer spending, but with inflation this high, I don't see this as a positive thing
Yeah.
in any fashion.
No, I agree. I think the problem with looking at this data in like a vacuum is that you don't understand the impact that these decisions are going to have 5 years from now or a couple of years from now. So,
Exactly.
most
Exactly.
likely what's happening is people are spending money in the economy, but you don't see their debt burden, the rising debt burden. You don't see, any other concessions they're having to make in other parts of their life in order to, make these decisions. And granted, there's a lot of people out there that do just make bad financial decisions. Like they spend themselves into a point where it's just they can't come out of. So there's also a subtext of the populations like that. So, you know, is it good that you're our consumerism? Is it only always a good sign? Oftentimes it's not, especially in scenarios where you have a cap on wages and things are starting to turn in the economy. So,
Yeah,
um,
I would beg to say that it's not a good
yeah.
thing.
Hmm.
You know, yeah. So I think like if you look
That's
at where
good.
all
Yeah.
the spending is, yeah, I just think that like people have to really be paying attention, and like it's like I don't understand like why they think certain things are good. Like why are they portraying this to be a good thing? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I'm so curious as to like what they believe this is a good thing for.
What's non-store retailers? Oh, just online sales?
No, if you scroll down, it says it. Scroll down. Scroll down right there. Categories, and then you go to hold on. It says it in these right at the top here.
Further up.
Yep, right in here. Well, while households are spending, the categories leading with the spending growth, the households are becoming much more recurrent. So, for example, sales at non-store retailers and general merchandise stores were some of the leading categories. So to me, like a non-store retailers, which I guess would be online stores.
Like Amazon and stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So Amazon, miscellaneous retailers, gas stations, huh? Nice.
Interesting. Yeah, I
And
mean, I just find it funny.
Wawa's coming to town, man, so we're about to
That's
see
right.
what
We're excited for that. It's like,
for
don't you
the
love
first
how
part, we're
like
gonna start seeing.
non-store retailers, you see like things like Amazon and stuff like that. Don't you love that Amazon is up to 11% in spending? Did you
Oh
actually?
yeah.
I heard it. I heard a statement the other day that Amazon controls more than 50% of all retail purchasers or something like that, like or something of that magnitude.
hmm Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so what's interesting to
It's
me about
crazy.
it, because I try to follow retail trends relatively closely, and back in last year, I interviewed a gentleman named Aaron Zucker, who's a retail investor,
Yep.
focuses strictly on single tenant net lease stuff, and he was telling me that back in 2019 he was at a ICSC conference, the International Council of Shopping Centers, and there was like a kind of some symposium where they talked about online retail versus in-store retail, and there was a question that was posed by the speaker saying, okay, so what do you guys think that the percentage of sales is online versus in store? And people were throwing out numbers like 30%, 40%, 50%. And he's like, no, the true number is actually 7%. And that was in 2019, granted. So, now we're in a post-COVID.
7%. What
Seven
specifically?
percent of all sales were done at that time in 2019. 7% of all sales for retail were online.
I mean, today has got to be closer to 20
It may
plus.
very well be in that 15 to 20% range.
We're googling it, team.
We're gonna
We're
Google it.
googling it right
I
now.
like
We're
it.
googling it
I
right
like
now.
it. We try to
What?
be as accurate as possible. Sometimes
What
it doesn't always work out
percentage
though.
of all retail? Just go ahead. I'll let you go.
Or percentage of retail sales. I'm interested to see the number.
Okay, it says in 2022 at least 14.8
Mm-hmm.
of all of retail sales are online in the United States as of 2022. It says 24% of purchases are expected to take place online by 2026.
Okay, so a quarter almost, but it's a lot less than what a lot of people think. Like people were saying, "Oh, Amazon's killing retail. Amazon's, the
What?
store itself is kind of going the way of the dinosaur."
Yeah, it
But
says 19.4 as of 2023.
okay, so yeah, close to 20, which is still significant. Don't get me wrong, but
Sure.
compared to what a lot of people think, it is, not that way.
Yeah, 100%. So what do we got here? Baby boomers, huh?
Yeah. So next up is retiring baby boomers will leave construction sector in a lurch. So apparently there's 11,000 baby boomers who retire each day this year. So put that in perspective. It's kind of crazy. But
Holy cow.
it's amazing. And the employment age of people over 55, which is a proxy for baby boomers, apparently that's how they track a lot of this stuff in the different industries. Apparently in construction and the trades profession, there is a very large percentage of individuals that fall in this category. And there's not enough people coming in to replace them. So, the construction industry has gone through a period of significant expansion since COVID. I mean, I know many people who own construction companies and are in, higher leadership within construction companies, and they've had some of their best years over the last couple of years. So there's definitely not a shortage of projects out there for them to do, but from the labor standpoint, they're really struggling to keep and to find new talent, especially people who are kind of younger in their career that are willing to stick around. And again, this work is very, manual. It's a manual labor, so it's a lot more intensive when it comes on your body. And so being younger and being able to move around on these different jobs is going to be an important, thing going forward. And so they talk a lot about what the ramifications of what's happening in the industry is, and what ways they could potentially address it going forward. But regardless, it doesn't look very good in the long run for trades and construction companies in being able to find people, which means most likely what's going to end up happening is the cost of labor is just going to continue to go up. And at a certain point, if you're in high school and you're looking, you say, oh, well, I could go to college and incur, 200 grand in debt, because that's the trend that a lot of these colleges are going on. They're just raising tuition rates unbelievably. And then I can come out of college, make 50 grand a year, or I can go become an electrician or a plumber or get in the construction space, and I could be making six figures in 2 years. Like
I really do believe I'm curious to get your thoughts. I do believe that trades, okay, the trades, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, you name it, right? I mean, obviously certain trades will get higher than others, but I think they'll be the new doctors of the future, right? Like, income wise, because nobody wants to do it. these like, and I'm curious, right in the comment section down below, I'm curious what you think, because like nobody is going to school saying, I want to be a plumber. Nobody is doing that. The only people who are becoming plumbers these days are people who it's in the family, right? Like my father's a plumber. We have a plumbing business, or, my brother's a plumber, whatever, right? Like, you
Mhm.
fall into it because of the family line, right? But nobody is going into these trades, or very few people are going into the trades these days. I mean, I remember when I was younger, I mean, a few of these guys that I went to high school with who didn't go to college similar to me got into construction.
Mhm.
And they were making great money. They were making six figures within the first 2 years, maybe 3 years. So they was 20, 21, 22-year-old kids making over $100,000 a year,
Yeah.
Which is crazy, right? But very, very, very doable. I mean, now these guys are making 140, 150, 180, 8, 10 years later, whatever it is now. And I don't blame them. I don't
Yeah.
blame them.
I mean, if I were going to start a company out of high school, or just after, maybe I'd get my journeyman's license or something along those lines. Go out and start your own company. You're not going to struggle for work. I can guarantee you that. You're going to be able to find plenty of work, and at a certain point, you're going to be able to name your own price, like whatever price you want. And in reality, like if my plumber, for example, the person I use a lot, like I don't argue with him on price. Like it's like, it's
Exactly.
either this or I can go
Same
find
thing with my
14
handyman.
other. Huh?
Same thing with my handyman.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like, okay, well, if you don't want to pay me this price, then okay, I'll just go down the street. There's like 4 other people that need my services, and get it done. And I, obviously I want to build a relationship, good relationship with them long term. So I'm like, absolutely, let's get it done. And that's the way you handle it. But again, imagine if you're willing to put in the work to get into that profession. I mean, I think it's a no brainer.
100%. I really do believe that like you're going to start seeing these professions start to absolutely skyrocket in income
Mhm.
over the next 5 to 10 years. Because it's it's the freaking craziest thing to me, dude. Like the young kids these days, it is the wildest thing to me how like so many of them just don't want to work.
Mhm.
Tell me if I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but like everyone that I meet that's like sub 25, the amount of them who actually want to work, right? Like every one of them that I'm talking to is like, oh yeah, I'm trying to do, find a job that I can do the least amount of work to get paid the most amount of money. I'm like, this just comes out of their mouth. I mean, like,
Mhm.
just the
Yeah.
craziest thing to me that I'm like, they do not want to work, right? At all.
Yeah.
They have no drive.
Well, and also too, it's just being able to deal with adversity. I feel like that's definitely something that you just have to go through it in order to just exercise that muscle. And a lot of times when people are faced with adversity, many, especially I don't know, like having conversations with people who are, of that age group in their early 20s and whatever else, a lot of them, get flustered or disheartened very easily. And then they allow themselves to kind of just fall into this trap where it's like, oh, well, maybe this isn't the path for me, or maybe this isn't the thing I'm supposed to be doing, because you reached a little bit of, adversity. It's like, bro, or, whether you're a guy, gal, whatever, it's like, you gotta just push on through, just
Yeah.
figure it out, and you get better at that. And it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean that it's not going to, sting every once in a while, but, over time you get a stronger,
It's just the most
demeanor.
wild thing I've ever experienced in my life.
Mhm.
It's like for now, it's like I honestly I am flabbergasted. Okay, I could use many words, but I am blown away by the lack of ambition in the newer and newer generations of kids to come. Like just zero, like so little ambition. And listen, man, I feel like I'm 20 some odd. Like I feel young, right? Like I'm 29 now. I feel like I'm 22 years old. Like I had the whole world ahead of me, right? But it's like some of these people have zero ambition. So like if you just have a little bit of ambition and willing to work hard, you will freaking bypass so many freaking people,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't take that much to be, top tier in this world anymore.
Yeah. No,
But
good
I
point.
digress.
All right. So
Um,
next up is Henry's article.
yeah. So this is just, we keep talking about office. This is, Boston office conversions gain momentum with help of city initiative program. So this is something which we've touched on a few times, but I wanted to bring this up as an example to show some cities are really getting behind the idea. Good for
Mhm.
you, Boston. Good for you. Whoever's in charge of, the planning and zoning department, I give you a lot of kudos, okay? Because you are getting the message, okay? Like giving the ability of these landlords to actually convert these, and giving tax incentive programs, and just you are doing it right. Okay, so if anybody's watching who has any side of pull in the zoning codes or the planning and zoning departments of local municipalities, Boston, you were doing it right. Give you my thumbs up. Good for you. Right. This is what every single municipality needs to be doing nationwide to take care of their office issues. If there is a vacant building, or if you are less than 10 or 20% occupied, you should be eligible for this type of ability, right? Or even under 50%. Right? If you're under a certain percentage ratio, you should be eligible for tax credits. We're like, hey, clearly you're either going to lose your building, and then the township is, the bank is just going to be getting a property, and the township is just going to have a building that is going to sit majorly vacant, and just no one's going to want to pay attention to. It's going to look ugly. It's never going to be invested in. No one's going to want to put money there. What do? It's like townships need to be working with these developers and making it a win-win for everybody. Boston, good for you. I haven't really seen much of this type of positivity in New Jersey yet. I really hope that people in New Jersey seem to figure it out eventually. That would be nice, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I couldn't agree more. I think it's a difficult problem to solve because a lot of times too, you've got so many. Sometimes the best answer is to just demo the building, but the problem is that no one wants to see these big skyscrapers come down. And so, it's kind of a catch-22 where you have this building that, really, in order for it to be economical, or not even economical, let's throw economics out of the equation. In order for it to be feasible to do this project, you have to take on a significant debt burden to be able to do that. And, or you have to reconfigure the entire structure of the building to support whatever you're trying to do. And oftentimes it just doesn't make any sense, like why you would do that. Now with this particular building that they're taking on, maybe it's one of those good candidates that can support a conversion, but I don't know. I mean, I wish that, and it's wishful thinking, but I really do wish that other cities out there would be open to the idea of saying, well, you know what? Let's scrap our losses. Let's try to see if we can, demo this building, and then let's go ground up with something that's actually going to be the most efficient building for this particular site. Yep. But I don't think that's ever going to happen because
you have too many people who are like, we like the architecture in this place, and we want the historic factual BS crap that means nothing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's too it's that no one wants to see skyscrapers get demolished, like if they feel like they're going backwards. But in reality, it's like you're taking a step back to hopefully take 2 or 3 steps forward over a 5 to 10 year period. But
yeah, but also, like, listen, if you give enough of a tax credit, most people don't want to take a building down. Mm-hmm. Most people don't, right? They would rather just have the ability to have a ton of tax credits and tax incentives to just convert the building. I mean, don't get me wrong. In some instances, you just got to take the building down because of how it was built. But obviously some of these developers are really hesitant to buying a building and then tearing it down to just rebuild another building the same size.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But with construction costs, you're basically right there anyways.
Well, sometimes. And that's the thing is, like, you at some point the math is going to be like, is it worth it? Like, because exactly. if it costs you, let's call it $75 million to renovate a building, but in order to demo it and then go and ground up, it's going to cost you $65 million. Like, and obviously this is just numbers I'm pulling out of my.
Sure. No, I get it.
Like there's no.
But this is the other thing that landlords need to understand. It's just like, put yourself in, like, so many landlords, I feel like, just don't they don't put themselves in a buyer's shoes. They don't. Mm-hmm. They just have these pie in the sky numbers, and they're like, if I get it, cool. If not, I don't really care. I could just sit on it, which is also a really stupid mentality, mm-hmm. right? Especially I'm saying if you're losing money, by the way. I'm not saying if you're making money, because, like, I have several buildings. I'm sure you have several properties that, we're making money on. If I don't get my price, I really don't care. I'll sit on it for the rest of my life. I really don't care. But I'm saying if you're losing money and you're just being naive and stupid, and try to wait out for your number, versus why don't you put yourselves in the shoes of the buyer and realize they need to make a substantial profit, or no one on planet Earth would buy it. That you're not buying property for charity. Yeah. I think we'd probably see a lot better results.
Oh, absolutely. And these are the type of conversations I have with people. I mean, you do too, I'm sure, every day. It's like, what's the loss associated with you waiting and choosing to not make a decision? Because not making a decision is the decision, right? You're making a decision to wait, or to just see what else can come along. And that may be indefinite. Like, especially if you're wildly outside of what, the true value of a building is, or if you're trying to lease a space, your true value of what the rent should be. So oftentimes people don't think of that. I remember early on in my career, I had a client of mine that it was like a $2.5 million shopping center deal. And the deal almost fell apart over 10 grand. Because my guy's like, I won't pay a penny more. And the seller's like, oh, I want this one. And, I'm not going to be willing to go down to 10 grand. And I was just like sitting there. I was like, dude, like 10 grand on a $2.5 million deal. It was just like mind boggling to me. But that's what happens.
When he gets to larger and larger deals, it's just a principle thing.
It's ego. It's all ego.
It's all ego.
I even did the math. I was like, look, like, I understand that, you don't want to pay anything more, but let's assume that, you decide to pay a little bit more. That means you're going to come to the table with another 20%, so $2 grand, and then over a period of, the term, it's a 20-year AM with at the time it was like a 4% interest rate. That means your mortgage payment's going to be $44 higher than what it currently is. So it's like, are you willing to lose a deal over $44 a month? It's like, come on. Like,
I'll give you the $2 grand. You eat the $44.
That's what I'm saying.
And I'll get you lunch. I'll get you lunch once a month.
That's what I'm saying. I'll take you to lunch. How about that? I'll make up that $44 once a month. So
silly, man. Silly. It's funny, man, because it's like and by the way, for those of you guys watching, we appreciate you guys tuning in live. If you guys can give this a thumbs up, we appreciate it very, very much. And let us know down in the comment section down below if there's any articles or information or content you'd like to see in the future episodes. And Chad, I see your comment there. Yes, we miss you. All good. We'll see you next week, my man. Yeah, other than that, Chad, Raphael, is there any other announcements or anything else you'd like to make?
No, just again, great to see everyone. The weather's changing. The Kentucky Derby is going to be coming to town soon, so there's a lot of festivities coming available. Yeah, I know. Nice. It's the 150th running too, so you guys need to watch.
When is that? When is the
4th of May, actually? May 4th. May the 4th be with you, actually. So.
I love that. Yeah. May the 4th be. I love it. So listen, guys, we appreciate you guys tuning in. We're coming to you live every single Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Excited to have you guys all tune in next week. If you guys enjoyed the content, please make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to all the channels as you'd like to, please. We appreciate it very much. And other than that, we'll see you guys next week. Take care, everybody. We appreciate you.